Hi everyone, I'm happy to have another webinar with Antonina and this time Aditi has joined us. We have a very interesting and modern topic about diversity and the importance of diversity for modern companies, especially startups. And two smart ladies from Google have joined us to talk about, on this important topic and why it matters for businesses to have diverse teams and how it can help businesses to grow and prosper. I have a few slides to show you. Just let me share the screen. So the topic of the event is being different makes a difference working in multicultural teams. And Aditi VISWANTHAN, sorry if I pronounce it incorrectly, and Antonina KONONOVA are both working at Google, and they will give their opinion, personal opinion, about what it means for them working on a diverse team. And this topic is actually very important in the United States, and the United States is known for successful startups, and the immigrants in the United States make a difference in the country. So I'm sure ladies will touch a lot on that. And what else I want to say, a few words and updates about the community. Global World community, which I started not too long ago, is growing very rapidly, and we have a very simple mission to help entrepreneurs globally, to connect them and give them equal access to global capital, customers, and like-minded people. And your role is to basically help each other with different types of resources like connections, expertise, and anything else your peers are asking on the group. Because once you ask for help, they will be coming back to you with something they can help you with. And since we are an international community, we operate in most of the countries, this power of network can become an essential success point for your business to get global traction. So use this opportunity, and it's all free. We all develop this community together. Recent speakers that recently spoke at our events, which are very known and very known speakers, which opinion matters a lot to many entrepreneurs around the world, which are Bob Dorff, who wrote the book, The Startup Owns Manual, with Steve Blank. We were learning how to properly pitch from probably one of the best person doing pitch decks and pitch presentations, Donna Griffith. Her pitch decks raised about $500 million. Another amazing speaker we had, Steve Hoffman, who explained 10 steps how to raise capital in Silicon Valley and in China. It's actually an amazing talk. I recommend highly everyone to watch it on our YouTube. We had a live pitch to global investors, and if your startup is generating $1 million of global revenue or more, and you have some traction in the United States, you could be invited for this pitch to pitch global investors for free and have an opportunity to get funded. And many more other great speakers we had, so you can see these names are pretty known to most of the people. Our upcoming events. Tomorrow, we will have 500 startups. We'll discuss how to join how to get accepted into their newly formatted program. It's very important nowadays to get into such kind of accelerators. Also, some people, credible people from Stanford are joining us to speak on human innovation and design experience in the past, present, and future. So how to create innovative ideas and take it to the market. And so I highly recommend to join it. It will be also it will be in 2 days. On July 9th, we'll have another webinar, but it will be in Russian. Those will be, the previous ones will be in English, but this one in Russian, History of Silicon Valley Part 2. It's amazing webinar. I highly recommend to join because it's very interactive and people will love it. If you want to learn about regulatory requirements in the United States and how to make sure that your business won't hit any legal issues, join our webinar with Rod. He will explain in Russian how to prepare for legal requirements in the United States. If you would like to learn some success story from the person who is working on electric cars and autonomous cars, and how to raise capital in this very technology heavy sector, Mikhail Bakunin will talk about that. And this webinar will also be in Russian. So a few webinars in English. We focus mostly in English, but since we have a lot of successful entrepreneurs from Russia, we're giving the opportunity for Russian entrepreneurs to connect with them directly. But our community is English speaking, so just wanted to make sure you all know that. Another networking event we will have this Friday. People entrepreneurs from around the world will connect and network to help each other to grow their businesses, to take their businesses to other markets, exchange contacts, and so on. So I highly recommend to join, and also invite other entrepreneurs if you know who might benefit out of it. And if you like our events, you want to join future events, just scan this QR code and you're good to go. You'll see all the events, and we'll be able to join them for free. And for our community members, we have a secret code to join events without registration. It's very fast and simple. And just last thing, I wanted to mention we have partners who are helping us spread the voice about our community. It's RusBase, IB Consultor, Skolkovo Technopark, GSD Venture Studios, and Moscow School of Management, Skolkovo. On my part, that's it. I wanted to invite Antonina and Aditi and let you ladies to take the stage. Please present yourself, say a few words about your background, and you're good to go. Just 45 minutes or so. Feel free to make fun of it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for the permission to make fun of it. Yes, hi. So my name is Antonina. For the last 7 years, I've been working in Google, first in Ireland for 5 years, and then here in California. In California, I had a chance to work in the internal incubator Area 120, where we actually worked with Aditi together. So she was one of my first co-founders there and the first engineer on the team. So right now I still work on a machine translation project, but as part of a bigger Google. But actually I wanted to share our experiences working with Aditi, because we relocated pretty much at the same time. I relocated from Ireland, having like pretty much a Russian background, and she relocated from India for that project. And I think here most people are starting their companies, and at some point they will be hiring people who are not Russians and not like not necessarily Americans. Like basically they will be hiring other people who either hiring or like finding co-founders like in teams that are very, very different from what they are used to. So I'll give the word to Aditi to tell us about her story a little bit, because it's a more unusual background for this meetup, I think. And then we'll discuss a little bit how entrepreneurs can approach working in these like multicultural teams.
Right. Thanks, Antonina, and thank you for inviting me to talk here. So yeah, like Antonina said, I worked in India for the first few years of my career, and I worked as a data engineer and a machine learning engineer. I had a few like startups that, you know, I tried, but then kind of gave up on eventually. And in the end, yeah, I moved to Area 120, which is Google's internal incubator in San Francisco, where I worked with Antonina on a machine translation product. We worked on it for about, I would say, 8 to 9 months until it moved into a Google team. So now it's being continued within Google. And I moved on to another team within Area 120, which works on ad-related conversational tech. So yeah, it's been a eventful journey and a long journey, and I think I can bring something to the table on multiculturalism.
Yeah, so I remember that Aditi always impressed me with her fearlessness, because basically the first time I met her was at a networking event, which was fully offline, fully online, but that was before the COVID. So I think it was on the US time zone, while I was still in Europe and she was still in India. I think we didn't even see each other, so we were talking on the phone, like not on the phone, but like just like it was like an audio only meetup. And I just for me it was like maybe 11 at night or something, and for her it was something like very late night or early morning, so it was like a pure coincidence how we met up. And then like I pitched the idea to her, and she was like, yeah, I have experience in this. I would work on it. Like, and then we checked the requirements if she can join, and it turned out that she's actually not eligible to join, like as per the requirements of Area 120. But then she said, okay, I can join 20%. So it was like this very, very enthusiastic approach that totally got me in. And then basically, once we got accepted and got funded to work on this internal startup, Aditi relocated like in 1 month or something, and then she also brought her partner in, which was I think also quite unusual, because yeah, I didn't even know that like it would all work that smoothly. So maybe the first question that I would have for Aditi would be, like many people here are looking like will probably be hiring soon, or looking for co-founders. So my personal opinion is that like, yeah, it's easier to hire or join forces with other immigrants, not with like people from Stanford or whatnot, initially. And for example, Russian engineers are usually kind of cheaper in a way than um, local talent, and also like I think India has similar reputation. That wasn't a concern at Google, of course, but we are here to express our personal opinions as well, and not to represent Google. So Aditi, what do you think like a Russian or like immigrant entrepreneur from emerging markets can do to attract like, yeah, kind of to sell their ideas or their company to immigrants like in India or maybe China, if you are of that community?
Yeah, so I think that firstly, there is a business model that really works. So I think a lot of Indian founders in the US, how they operate is that they have their headquarters in the US and they have a large team of engineers back in India. And this is how you see a lot of them becoming competitive with the American market, as well as being able to hire like a large amount of engineers, which are available in India very easily, I would say. And yeah, so I think that to attract engineering talent in India, it would be, I think a big part of it would be to market in India itself, see if you can open an office in these different countries. And at the same time, to attract talent in the US, I think that just marketing yourself as a multicultural team, as somebody who wants to like build a product, international product, somebody who wants to grow into these different countries, yeah, I think that would attract Indians probably. Yeah.
Okay, and I believe you yourself have kind of non-standard background for India as well, because it, again, as per stereotypes, it's a little bit more traditional country, so there is this caste society that most of us are not aware of properly, etc. So can you maybe, and yeah, and on top of it, you're a woman, which is like even in the US, people still see it as one of the factors of forming diverse teams. So can you maybe tell us a little bit just about your story working for all these startups before Google? What was challenging for you, how you joined Google, and what were your first impressions when you moved into the US?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, starting with my background. So I come from, I would say, like the kind of upper caste in India, and my family has been fairly well off, and I mean, I came from a fairly privileged family, but India is such an enormous multicultural country that, you know, like even languages, when we were working on this machine translation idea, there are just like 200 languages that are spoken in India. Each state that you go to, there are like 28 states. Each state that you go to speaks a different language. And in India itself, I've lived in like 4 to 5 different states, where in each state I kind of had to learn the language of the state and be able to learn their cultures. The food is different, the religions are different. So there's a lot of diversity just within uh, India itself, that one person cannot represent all of the country. So I think just having people from many different backgrounds is important. Having people who are well traveled within, you know, like in the world and within their own country and have experienced a lot of things there as well is important. So yeah, I was always one of the, ever since I think I was 14 or 15 years old, I was a minority in my classes, because the women didn't traditionally choose engineering. So it would be like I was like one of the 5 girls in a class of like 40 people or 40 other guys. And in engineering as well, we were like, it was a 1:8 ratio or something. So for every one girl, there were like 8 guys. And there were some branches of engineering, like mechanical engineering, where there's a batch of 300, and there's only one girl in that entire batch of 300. So, so yeah, like I've kind of become used to being a minority. Um, I wouldn't say that it was like women were at a disadvantage in engineering. It was just that you kind of choose differently as you grow older. I think many women in India, and yeah, it is a traditional place. People prefer to choose, uh, you know, professions that are suitable for eventually, say, starting a family and being able to work from home and being able to uh, have your own business in your own house. So, so
But
yeah,
now everyone can work from home.
yeah, exactly. Which is what I was coming to. I think this is like a huge enabler, and it's something that would open the doors to a lot more people becoming engineers, even say learning computer science courses online and being able to code from their homes. I think that is a big thing that has prevented women in India traditionally from, like going out to work or traveling to work or just being away from their, say, partners.
So, for example, if there is a Russian entrepreneur who decides to like there is a position for, say, engineering, and he hires or she hires in India, and there are women applicants, are there any things that this entrepreneur could do to kind of make the process more fair, so considering all this background?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of sensitivity that can go into hiring a woman. I don't know if it applies to just Indians, but probably women all over. So in India specifically, I think that a lot of the pressure comes from social pressure, which is as soon as you say have a family and you have kids, it is going to be the woman who's expected to put in your hours. So even in tech companies that were fairly modern in India, like the say American companies that had branches in India, you would generally not find women with kids staying late, although you would find men with kids staying till 10 p.m. at night and 11 p.m. at night. It was not the case with women, and I think they would likely have been judged if they stayed that late every day. So I think just having this kind of culture in an office that is sensitive to that, sensitive to the fact that, like women are going to have the social pressure, either make it, like build this awareness that yes, men should take a share in it, or build an awareness that yeah, it's not fair to these women if everyone's staying till 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. at night. It's kind of try to level the playing field, bring in that work-life balance, just yeah, make it more even for others.
Is work-life balance like a thing at all in India? So here I'll just throw in a few things that I noticed when working with Indian team members in Google before yourself. So basically the story is that at Google, I used to work in a team that was majorly based in India before I moved to California. And I think the impression that we all had in Europe was that Indians work all the time, even if they are Googlers. But like, yeah, for example, like you come to a meeting and then like a manager from tells you, oh, okay, now I will consult my report. And then they just like call this report directly without like pinging or anything. And you know that it's 11 p.m. their time. And like this report picks up and doesn't tell anything like, hey, why are you calling me this late or something. They just like start answering questions or anything. So yeah, I think even inside Google you could definitely see that like teams that are fully based in India are like very very hardworking. And I think there is one more stereotype that like most people in tech have. So again, I tell that this is a stereotype, but I think kind of my personal experience kind of backs up this stereotype. It's that um, usually like it's like if you form a diverse team, it's good to have an Indian there just to make the ambience kind of better. Because they're usually a bit more polite and kind and kind of courteous. So even if they do not do like outstanding technical work, they would still be good for like atmosphere. If you, for example, like if you have everybody like yeah, like just like different nationalities there, then probably the Indian person would be the kindest one. So where do you think this stereotype comes from?
Okay, I don't know that that's so broadly applicable, but I think that definitely the people that I've worked with at Google and elsewhere have all been very nice. I wouldn't, I've not had a bad experience with anybody. And our culture is, uh, I mean, you do grow up knowing that, you respect elders and uh, I mean, you're just polite in general, and nobody really confronts anybody else about. Uh, it's not a very confrontational culture, and especially in the workplace, even if like within your family and stuff, you might have conflicts, but you don't bring that out into public. So on the outside, I think yeah, you've been trained to be kind of polite and nice.
Yeah, there must
And
be a good
what was
English
your
word
other
for that.
question?
Yeah, it was just like, why
Another
do you
question.
think people perceive Indians as not nice, non-confrontational?
Yeah, like, I'm still not sure if that's a broad stereotype, but yeah, it's possibly because yeah, and any unniceness would not be on the outside. It would all be
Cool.
within your house, probably.
So once we tell us a little bit more about how you moved to California. So yeah, I can obviously comment on the part when I was your manager, but I think the thing that's might be interesting is about the Indian community here. So many people say that like the Russian community in California is not really that tight. So yeah, like you have some Russian entrepreneurs or startups, but they are very, very few just because like Russia itself doesn't have a very huge population. And I remember that like you found some other colleagues who moved here before from Bangalore or something very fast. And then like I, yeah, that was probably one of the factors that help you adapt here faster. So what can you tell about that?
Yeah, so I think especially as the years go by, there's a huge Indian community here right now. In fact, if you go to a place like Sunnyvale or Mountain-View, it almost feels like you're back in India. There's just so many Indian restaurants and grocery stores and things like that. So for me, coming to the US, even though it's like halfway across the world, and I think when you talk to an American about it, it's like it's they think it's a big deal, like that you've moved halfway across the world. But back in India, it was like it was an obvious thing to do, and especially in Google, uh, it was kind of known that being in a remote team or being in one of the remote centers, you just wouldn't get the quality of work that you do yet in headquarters. So for me, I think a big reason to move was just to be a part of Area 120, like that. I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial, and Area 120, I think, is a safe bet. Being an internal incubator, you still get your salary, you can take risks. It was something that was really appealing to me, and the way that Google had pitched it as well, and the way they structured it was a kind of it was a structure that made sense to me. So yeah, that was something that I always wanted to do. uh, Funny story about this. So yeah, my husband also came with me, and I think that was something that we discussed. Like there was no point in me going if he also wasn't going to come along. So he worked at Amazon back in India, and initially he thought about moving through Amazon because that's something that people used to do at Amazon as well. But then he wasn't enjoying the Amazon culture, and he thought it was kind of yeah, he thought it was too like too driven and too cutthroat. So he wanted to move out anyway. So then he just came with me here, and then he started working at Ancestry. So like a funny story about when he came. Uh, so he landed in the US, and we came to my place, and we were just walking around Market Street looking for I think groceries or something. And as we were walking down, and this is like 3 hours after he landed. So as we were walking down, he bumps into like these two college friends of his, who one of them, in fact, used to live with him in his same room back in Bangalore. And it was just so mind blowing to me that we come halfway across the world, and 3 hours in, we actually bump into somebody we know who he, in fact, used to live with. Like it was such a small world moment for me. And yeah, it just shows that there is a huge Indian community. There are a lot of Indian engineers who are now able to find the opportunity to come here, as well as there is people here. Like the US market is still growing so much that there's such a big demand for more and more engineers. So just for example, something like Google, right? In India, it was something like it was called a dream company. So in a batch of engineers, there would be like one engineer out of a batch of say 2,000 to 3,000 people who gets into Google. And it was like a really niche thing to get into. But as you come to the US, you realize that these companies are looking for engineers as much as engineers want to join them. And it's just the odds of getting into a dream company in the US is like so much higher than it is in India. And yeah, I think that was interesting for me to see. That's the reason that so many engineers do come here in the first place.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, because I'm not sure it is easier to start in the headquarters, because also like I think the hiring bar here is kind of based on the US credentials. And again, like that's my opinion, because like I don't work for the HR at Google, but I used to refer some very, very qualified candidates just like internally, and then they met all the minimum criteria, but then like the answers I received were like, yeah, like they meet all the minimum criteria, but we see more qualified candidates. And these were like literally people with Ivy League degrees, or like,
So they didn't get an interview even?
yeah, no.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, I'm not sure what that's about, but like in general, I think that once you get an interview, your odds are, so for example, in Google, I think it was in 2019 or 2018, there was like 1 in 5 people who interviewed got hired. Whereas in a place like India, it was something like 1 in 3,000, 4,000 who got hired. And
but
at least
did
back
they really
then, I'm not.
interview 3,000 people? Did they interview 3,000 people? That was probably for the
This was
CVs,
in
right?
colleges, so I think it was like an online test or something. It was the code jam, probably. Yeah, I'm not sure if they actually interviewed, but so right now in the US, there's almost everybody who did computer science with me, who was close to me, is now in Google, for example. So I don't think that the bar is any different. It's just that there's so much more growth in the US right now. There's so much more hiring that's happening, and I think
Well,
the
now,
funding is higher and the markets are higher. And that might not be true for right now, but it was true, I think, for the last couple of years. Like these companies have grown massively in the last year or so.
so would you really and again, I'm asking it keeping the audience in mind, like, would you really consider leaving Google and joining a startup? Like not starting your own startup, which is another thing, but like joining a startup? Because here I have a thesis that like if you want to poach people from Google for your small startup, you should probably go after other immigrants and like people who are perhaps less adapted, and maybe they don't know their opportunity cost fully.
Yeah, I think that there's probably like a couple of people that would be interested. So one is somebody like me. Yeah, like I'm always interested in joining something and building it like from scratch and growing it. So there's the kind of person I think who has like an entrepreneurial streak, who I think would always want to join a startup and take those risks. There's I think the other kind of person who, yeah, is just kind of willing to yeah, just willing to do interesting work and is not too focused on, you know, like where they are. And I think yeah, for me personally, right now visa issues are a kind of dampener. So I don't have all the choices that I would have had if I didn't have visa issues. So for example, yeah, I would have loved to start something of my own, but it's probably not realistically possible right now for me. And yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind with immigrants. It's probably going to be a long process before, even though I'm sure there'll be a lot very willing to join, even people that you can hire from different countries and say try to bring them over, or even like, yeah, if you try to do that. But it's going to be a long and probably painful process of getting immigration and visas and stuff through. And I think it might be easier for Russians, but it's not too easy for Indians right now.
I see.
I just
So
would say
any
it's not easy for Russians, just believe me. Everyone is
Okay.
struggling. I know it's more stress on Chinese and Indians, but all immigrants who are coming to the United States facing this immigration challenge, life challenge, I would say, mining challenge. So it's not only, it's everyone for sure. Just 2 cents from me.
Okay. So yeah, I'm actually glad that there's such a strong like Russian entrepreneurial community and such a strong like even global entrepreneurial community, because I think that if there weren't these challenges, there would have been a lot more people, trying to build companies here.
But now when the world became remote, I think people can actually like start way more remote first companies, so they don't really need to bring their Russian engineers here or to bring like Indian engineers here, and they can like use the market discrepancies to leverage it, etc. So like if someone forms a remote first team, and again, when we started, we actually worked on our project as a side project with one more person, and yeah, basically we were based in Dublin, San Francisco, and India. Well, it wasn't really like work, so, but for example, Aditi delivered the MVP before we ever met in person. It was like 6 months before we met in person. So how, yeah, maybe you can give us some tips on how to form these remote teams and like what would work and what wouldn't based on your personal observations.
I think remote teams do work, and I think especially a team where each person kind of has personal contact with the other. I'm not so sure as the team grows bigger and you just never meet in person that it scales as well. So, but I think definitely we were very productive when we were remote, and it's in a company like Google, at least like these remote offices work really well. You're used to only meeting people online and on GVC and never in person for years and still working with them. And that has definitely worked really well. Yeah, but I do think that as yeah as you start growing, say from a team of co-founders to more and more engineers, it might become hard to scale. It does seem that there are many companies now who are going fully remote, though.
Yeah,
Like
like
there are a few engineer friends that I know who have been working remote even before COVID, and their companies are doing really well right now in startups.
yeah, actually, one of our directors recently left Google and joined a remote first
Okay.
startup. Um, yeah, and that was actually one of the reasons, because he just wanted to relocate. So yeah, that can actually be a huge advantage if you want
Yeah.
to attract people with families, etc. So I think Daniel was posting about the questions on the chat. Did we get any questions? We can probably slowly move to that part.
Yeah, we
with
got a few
moderator.
questions. I'm getting questions online during the stream. So first question, and I'll be reading. Can you compare companies who have diversity versus who has low diversity versus high diversity, and which performs better? Like what? I mean, how would you compare those companies? And if you give examples, it would be even better.
Yeah, so there has been a lot of academic research on that. So it was mostly conducted in the US, and usually they compared the market, like the stock performance of the companies that had, for example, female board directors, uh, board members, or like women in the top management. So I think in the US, how it's approached usually is that you compare the percentage of women and minorities in the management positions, because it has mostly been solved in the like bottom, like in kind of like non-executive roles, and then you compare the stock performance of these companies or the financial results. And yeah, there has been a lot of research and results starting in 90s, I think, where like they have proven that quite convincingly. I can
I
probably
think
send some links later, but it's not a research done by me. It's just like common research.
yeah, I think just to add to that, like I think as companies try to grow and go international, or say even grow to a more diverse set of customers, I think that you can only service diversity with diversity. So, like for example, if you don't have a woman on your team, or if you don't have a woman manager or person directing product, you're not going to be able to build for women. You're not going to be able to expand for women as, you know, a person who is a woman can. And same for, say, if you want to expand into international markets, like I don't think a non-Indian would be able to understand India as well as, say, an Indian and be able to expand into that market. There is just so much cultural context, so much context of who you are as a person that would help. And as you go up the managerial chain, I think, yeah, you need to continue to keep having that diversity, just so that just so that you're able to be sensitive to the people who are building your products and the diverse team that's building your products. And yeah, I think this is more and more applicable as the world goes global and companies need to go international and have many different types of customers to be able to be profitable.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting. Good two opinions. I really like it. Another question I have, how diversity can help global startups? So we have startup community here, and guys from around the world are wondering, like, okay, I mean, all right, yeah, I can add some diverse people probably. It's a challenge for me. It's different mindset. So, I mean, how diversity can help global startups?
So I think Aditi mostly answered it, that people would bring a different perspective to the table, and they would. So I think there was also a study where they compared like how people felt in the diverse teams and which results these teams achieved. So basically, um, in a diverse team versus non-diverse, people initially felt worse because it took more time to come to the to resolve their differences and to agree on something. But then the results were much better than in those teams where they did not really have any confrontation and where they felt good about themselves. So yeah, I think it's really the differences that make the decision stronger. And secondly, again, what I personally noticed is that when you work, for example, when I worked with other Russians, I had a lot of presumptions based on my cultural background, and sometimes somebody is mean to you, and you think, okay, like they are mean to me because they are mean, or they are meaning bad, and like there is a whole flow of thoughts of why and what to do with that, etc. And when it is someone from another culture, you don't know. So you really don't know what like some. And people are trying to be nicer to each other initially, maybe because they don't speak English properly. So like they usually like learn some polite phrases first and not really like some bad words. And initially you like yeah, you just like to really keep it business focused, and there is way less assumption that might still be wrong. But like with a Russian, you can kind of project something onto another person's personality, and that might be wrong or not wrong, but it just creates too much stress. With a in a diverse team, you don't know how to project it, so there is just less stress.
Yeah, interesting point. I was working at a startup in San Francisco quite some time ago, and you might not put me in a minority, but I felt like myself as a minority working in there because I'm Russian, and they didn't allow to speak Russian in the office. They allowed only English and any other languages, but not Russian. So
what? Why?
So it was on the wall, like no Russian in the office. Like
Oh my.
I don't mind, like, but then if we speak only English, let's speak only English. That's fine. But no Russian is a little bit abusing this kind of. I don't know. I mean, I didn't feel comfortable about that.
Were
Yeah,
you the only
I'm not.
Russian there?
Which one? What?
Were you the only Russian in the team?
No, there were few Russians, and it was posted by Russians actually. The other thing I also found strange, Russian managers in the United States. Not all of them, but some. Like there is, they try to stay away from Russians. They think that sticking to Americans is better, so they just pretend they are already part of the Americans. So I mean, diversity, being different, is also, it's cool. I mean, if you're born Russian or if you're born Indian or any other countries, it's your identity. It's awesome. I mean, you cannot look different putting a lot of makeup on yourself and still be yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think right now in my team of 16 people, we have 8 nationalities, and it just makes the team so much more interesting, I think.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And to your point, Antonina, I think, and I mean, both of you actually, I think what comes to my mind right now, that putting diverse team is important. And I mean, it's obvious for many people, I guess, but putting the right rules to collaborate properly is even more important, because people are from different cultures, different beliefs, different, I don't know, like genders and whatever other differences they might have. It's all like a little bit like a clash on each other, and their mindset might be absolutely different to the other people, and different mindset in the rooms, in one room for different people. It might be a challenge and might create some issues. So those rules should be prepared by management, so this diverse team is efficient.
Yeah, and also in America there is a lot of regulations just about like, so like usually when you start talking about diversity, you also start talking about harassment, and like harassment is something that creates legal risk, because then it can end up in a lawsuit, etc. So so for example, in Google, we had these trainings on harassment delivered by a lawyer, yeah, I just saw that like when I moved from Ireland to the US, there was way more attention to all this, and there was, yeah, like when you just like retell it, it might seem stupid. Like, why do you tell people, for example, in which circumstances they could hug each other or stuff like that? But there was like, looking backwards, I actually find this very, very helpful, because it wasn't really like, okay, you have to do that, but it was really like a discussion with like, yeah, for example, you have people from this like very traditional cultures, and what if you're different genders, etc., and then like you come to a conclusion when you actually should do this. Yeah, so I think in the US it's also super important, because like many things that come from cultural differences can create legal risk.
I think on a global scale, if you talk about global startups, I mean, not every country has so many regulations for diversity support. And even in the United States, not everyone is reading the law. So you have to go through the training. And if you're like working like companies like Google, you probably get a training. But if you work in a startup, the training comes in a couple of years. If startup goes successful, after they cover like hundreds of clashes a day they have. And I think putting the values, what do you think, in your opinion, putting the values in the beginning by the founders is crucial when they are building the diverse team globally, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, values and like following these values, because most people would just look into what the leader does and doesn't do, I think.
You mean, okay, yeah, I agree with you. So following that, to have a kind of, not, I wouldn't, maybe not the right word, control of it, but keep track of it. So it's people follow these values, and the leader who express those values should probably be the first main example for the entire team expressing those values. Yeah, good point. I agree with you. Yeah. Another
I think,
question I have. Was that? Sorry.
yeah, I think just to add a small point to this, when Antonina and I, when we had our own startup and we founded it, I think one of the first things that we put into place was, oh, what should be our working hours when everyone is together? Like, okay, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., we're all going to be together. And whatever your other working hours are, or whatever culture you come from and the way you work, at least we had these ground rules set up. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to be very explicit about the things that are often like kind of understood when you're in a, like in a more monocultural team, and a multicultural team pushes you to make them explicit from the very beginning.
Yeah, and to this point, actually, I would support this also. I noticed that startups that are, for example, in San Francisco, that, for example, Russian startups, startups by Russian founders, because of this culture mindset and people probably not very well integrated in the local communities, they tend to naturally collect around themselves Russian team, like they're building just on the Russian team, and they're struggling in sales, they're struggling in raising capital, and just for outside world, outside their office, I would say, the world considers them as only like immigrants who just arrived and with their own local culture from the country which is not this one. And so I noticed that actually was a drawback at some point. I'm not saying being Russian is bad, it's a great thing, but just because they collected only one single culture team is making a challenge for them.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense to collect a Russian team here, because like then you're just spending like 4 times more on something that you could have created in Russia. So like, why to move to the US then?
Yeah, I agree. Another question I have, yeah, it's actually a very interesting question, I see. So if you're looking at startups, okay, where or how to find this diverse team that qualifies to be diverse? So we all, okay, we're looking at male founders in the United States, white male founders, which dominates probably, right? And from his perspective, he knows a lot of his peers who might be good for his team, and those probably mostly white male founders. It doesn't mean that he gains the diversity, but where or how he can find this diverse qualified team, it's a challenge. You don't need only like diverse, you need to, people with skills, right?
Yeah, so I think when you talk about the co-founding team, yeah, you should probably still speak with people that you know, especially if it is your first startup. So here, I don't see a problem with hiring your friends. If you don't have any friends who are not Russians, that's probably fine. Once you move to a more standard hiring process, you just cannot avoid like hiring diverse candidates if your process is fair and statistical. If it is like a statistical process, then you would just like, if you go to the normal job channel, like job search boards or whatnot, you would just like start like posting the ads, or like you go to LinkedIn, etc. And of course there will be some women applying, or there will like unless the there is something in the ad itself that that is discriminatory, or just like not adapted to someone who is not Russian. So like if you post an ad in Russian, that probably there will be Russians who like reach out, right? But like if you post it in English and like you proofread it so that like it sounded correct, then there will be female applicants and there will be applicants who are not Russians. So like if you just like you follow the standard process and there is absolutely nobody who like who doesn't fit your existing team, then like it would be just weird. And then like out of those, it's more of a selling exercise, I think. So like it's more about attracting the qualified candidates, because you like there might be some qualified candidates who applied, but then like the hiring process was so bad and non-inclusive or like repulsive or like the salary like negotiation or something was so bad that then like these qualified candidates just wouldn't want to work for you.
All right.
So I think diversity is also one of the selling points, because like, for example, if you hire a woman and then she comes to the office and she doesn't see any women there, it might influence her decision. But like, again, like you can still compensate it with other things.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that just forums like the one that you have are a really great way to network, to meet different people, to kind of pitch them and sell them on your ideas. And and I agree with Antonina's points that, you know, the more diversity you have, the easier it's going to be to hire more diversity, and the more attractive they will be to your startup.
Are there any resources like, I don't know, like web resources enough, or any other service that can just with a click of a button find a diverse team for you, something like that?
Well, we still want, like, I think every startup still wants to have these qualified candidates who also have a lot of hard skills. I think I remember there was a number of projects in Area 120 who were focusing on like diverse hiring or diverse supplier sourcing with different outcomes. So I cannot really recommend any specific resource. And I think you should still start with the hard skills, but then just like make your hiring process inclusive enough so that people with a diverse background did not just like withdraw their applications early in the process.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it depends on like who your market is as well. So if you want to go international, if you're working on, say, you know, something in the European market, it's going to become so much more important to have a European on your team. And yeah, I think that knowing the country, knowing what boards people are looking at there, what the job, you know, situation is, what are the job portals that people put their jobs up on. Yeah, I think just a bunch of research. Each country has its own job portals, and I think even community within the US has its own job portals pretty much, and Facebook groups and things like that. So kind of trying to go out there and post on all these.
So locally in those countries, at least you can find diversity by culture, but diversity by gender, diversity by other criteria. Okay, I mean, I guess it's not an easy question to answer, but I was thinking maybe you know some resources like that. I was wondering out of the blue, actually. Another question I have. Is there any situation where diversity is bad, in your opinion?
Yeah, it depends on the definition of diversity. So I think when you're just starting and like there is a strong kind of diversity of values, that's kind of bad, because you cannot, but it's usually not called diversity, but like, yeah, when there are very strong differences in like your goals and values from the very beginning, and like you're looking for your first co-founder, that is that, like, then it will be just hard to start. And later, I think, again, here it's my personal opinion, but I'm not like, not all companies work the same way as Google, and I think Google itself is very much focused on innovation, and that, like, yeah, like whatever you do, you should get buy-in from like a lot of people who are maybe like not really related to this project at all, but they have an opinion, and you're like have to hear, like to listen to them, and like it's very, very collaborative. But it actually makes things slower, and you do not really need innovation in everything you do. So like, for example, if you have a small business that sells hot dogs, you don't really need to like have a brainstorm about every decision that you make. And I'm pretty sure that there are bigger companies where you don't really need innovation all the time. So that's why there is such a big focus like in tech, because like you actually need a lot of this like creative energy flowing around, and that comes from discussions and differences. But if it is like a pretty straightforward business that probably does not really aim to achieve exponential growth, you don't like, why to spend time on like resolving all like this, on like breeding the culture of innovation? You don't really need innovation like every second day.
Yeah, fair point. Aditi, what do you think?
Yeah, so like I agree that I think diversity of like opinion and personality is probably going to be the thing that hits hardest. So I remember that when we started as well, we had these 4 personality types, like a giver, somebody who's a taker, somebody who's more prone to conflict, more conflict averse. So I think that if you have like these big diversity of personalities in your team, and you have somebody who's, somebody who's not going to ever have a conflict, versus this one person on the team who's like always speaking up and having a conflict with everybody, it's going to bring down the morale of the whole team, and it's going to like affect your overall productivity. So I think, yeah, it's important for people to get along with each other, and for your personality at least to gel. Yeah.
And my question, just we'll use opportunity as well to ask a question. And what if a person who is a minority, and he got his rights are abusing, or something, like he's being bullied or something, or at least feeling not comfortable in the environment he's in, what recommendation would you give those people so they can not just report this, but fix it, and make this wise step for them, so they can act as leaders to show the right example probably, and fix the thing in the team?
So are you asking what their manager should do?
No, those
or
people who is affected, like who are already like a minority, probably woman, or a guy like different beliefs, or like sex orientation or something, or culture something, or that being affected by outside, I mean, his peers. And what can he do? What would be your recommendation for him, for her to do to make the situation normal and fix it, not in a way just report it to government or something, but to make wise steps to fix it in the team, so they work as a team? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'd divide it into a few steps. So the first one would be to assess the situation, and how real it is to how realistic it is to change the existing situation versus just leaving the company. Because I think if you're in the Bay Area, the best step would be just like to go and work for a better company, and that would be the best revenge to this company. if you cannot really leave, for example, if you have a visa situation or like everything else is good, just the colleagues are not good, etc., then I would try to, and okay, for example, I already talked with my manager, or like if the manager is not receptive, or like manager is one of those bullies, then I would try to identify the informal leader in the group, and try to work with this informal leader first. Yeah, and I think that would probably be like the most efficient way to influence it. Sometimes, yeah, like maybe you can just like eliminate this informal leader in some way, and then it will be better. But usually, like when you already started feeling bad, unless you are the founder or like the leader of this group, it's really hard to forget what happened. So I would say just like try to find another job.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation a lot, and like what exactly is happening. But yeah, so I can give a personal example. So in my first company, I was the only girl in a team of, I think there was 25 guys, and I don't think it affected me professionally, but every time we would go to the cafeteria together, there would be like passing comments on some girl who was walking by, and like slowly those things kind of started getting on my nerves. And I think it was still a small thing, but like over the span of a year, it really started getting on my nerves. And I think that all I had to do was bring it up with them. But it's a hard thing when you're talking about like 20 people and me as one person. It was still a hard thing to bring up. But the thing is, when I did bring it up, they did stop, like doing things like passing comments and things like that. So I think that just speaking up, even though like I can imagine it's really, really hard to do, can make a big difference. Just saying that, you're affected by this. Yeah, that's probably the first step before going to any like official channels. And
Yeah.
that's probably the hardest one to do it also.
Yeah, I agree. As as a male who sometimes being challenged in the childhood, so I think the most important in situations somebody is challenging you is just to meet this person and look in the eye and say the truth, and try to correct it like with a conversation, but looking in the eye. Hiding these emotions, maybe they won't understand. So just I think, and it's my personal experience, my personal opinion, talking directly with the people who are affecting you negatively will probably, at least partially, will resolve it. And if you see people are not adequately acting on that, so that's the problem, and probably their problem already. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people, at least a large number of people, are not really mean or like they're not really bullies face to face. Like as long as you're with them and in close proximity and you're able to talk to them, it's very hard for somebody to keep being bullyish.
Yeah, agreed. And I will one last question. So people are asking, what would you recommend women entrepreneurs that are starting a company? Women entrepreneurship, women entrepreneurs is a very hot topic right now, and our community is supporting women entrepreneurs. We actually try to support any types of entrepreneurs as long as they really want to create some value. And this question, what would you recommend to women entrepreneurs when they start companies so they can succeed?
So here I would divide it again into like Russia versus the Bay Area. So it definitely, I think the strategies are a bit different. And I think at least in the Bay Area, being a woman entrepreneur is rather an advantage. So first one, I think is just like try to see things realistically. So if somebody said no to you, it's not it's not necessarily because you are a woman. Usually it has to do with other things, and just like always have these benchmarks in mind, like try to talk to your peers who are guys, and like if they, and most probably they had absolutely the same problem. So like that's first thing. Secondly, I think like under current circumstances, being a woman, at least in the Bay Area, a woman entrepreneur is actually an advantage, because yeah, there is so much attention to this topic that sometimes people overcompensate for it. I don't think in the VCs they care about it so much as in Google, but at least there is a lot of these like workshops for women, events for women, networks for women, etc., where you can like find some network that would not be accessible to men easier. Like, I mean, it would be accessible to men, but like not as fast. And secondly, like men are often also underestimate women entrepreneurs, and that actually helps, because like if you're actually competing against men entrepreneurs, they sometimes just like kind of underestimate what you can do. So yeah, sorry about that, but yeah, and they might just like not really pay attention to you as a competitor, while you actually can do something.
Yeah, women entrepreneurs, I mean, as any entrepreneur, are creative, and they see the opportunity and then they act. That's good.
Yeah, I think definitely a great point about, like taking as much advantage as you can of these different programs that kind of help build women entrepreneurs that are funding you, and like I think go out there and take as much advantage of it. And I think one more really practical thing would be, I think, to start young. Like if you're a woman entrepreneur, you know that like a very practical thing that might happen to you in the future is if you have kids, you're going to take a hit, and your startup, you're not going to be able to put in as much time as you used to put in before, say, you had your kids. So I would say that start as early as you can and try to build your company before you kind of have this kid problem.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. You know, I think what we are doing right now is amazing because your opinion is probably known and equal to the community in the Bay Area, but hearing this for people in different countries like Russia, CIS, it's a kind of very new information. And I think you're brave to actually share so much information, even in the United States. I think it's important for the world to unite, going global, and use all the opportunities we have. Now is the time when we can connect, and it doesn't matter what color you are, what country you're from, women, women, doesn't matter. I think if someone creates value in the world, this is what makes our world different, can change our world actually. And yeah, if you have a few last words to the audience, please feel free to say something, and you may address any audience like women entrepreneurs, diversity thing, or just say in general some words.
I actually heard a phrase somewhere recently that I think sounds good, is that be yourself is bad advice, because it's it's not really informative and lazy. But yeah, just like I think like don't be afraid to be yourself, but be someone else if you need to. That's the last word.
Adapt, you mean probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aditi?
Yeah, I think my last word would be like to keep being alert and to keep looking for opportunities, and as the world is going global, to like catch the tide and take it and not lose out on the uh, ongoing global.
Yeah, thank you. So, in my opinion, also what I learned from you right now is to act on an opportunity when you offer it to speak to an international audience. It's a very, I mean, I'm very thankful for that, and you guys do an amazing job. And also, you have a point. Like you actually opened a very interesting topic here and elaborated very well on this. I think it will be helpful for entrepreneurs in not only like in big cities like Moscow or Bangalore or Beijing, but it will be helpful for people like somewhere in Vladivostok or Yakutsk or probably smaller towns where entrepreneurs have only one thing, it's the internet, and you guys shared so much of important information. So I thank you so much for your participation and for this webinar. You hope to chat with you again soon, and please join our community, interact with our community. We have many entrepreneurs from different countries at different stages, some at the idea stage and they're challenging themselves, but some at the stage of raising capital, we call it $1 million. We actually have one of the founders from India who raised $30 million in their company, and I connected them with Russian space agency. So, I mean, it's going something, and we are doing a really global thing. It's pretty cool. And one last thing I just wanted to let you know, and also the audience, that our community is young, as I mentioned, but we are like crazy rapidly growing. We have over 1,000 entrepreneurs in our community. And since we are not about PRing ourselves, we are about actually members, about the community there in the center of our actually attention. And and what we are doing actually is looking for leaders in different countries to lead local communities on behalf of the global community from us. And we already have leaders in Armenia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Canada, Mexico, Nigeria also joined us. We have a leader in Nigeria. India recently joined us, and probably we will also look for more leaders in India, because India is a large country. So if you can recommend some active people who want to contribute into the global community, I'm open for that. And we're in discussion with people from entrepreneurs from Israel and Australia. So we are already truly global community, and you are contributing not just to small something, but already global people. And we partner with different organizations that are sharing our values. So yeah, this quick update, and I think we're doing something great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
All right, have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.